Welcome to another episode of Musing Wisely. My name is Willie Wisely, your host, and today we're speaking about films, specifically film scores. Specifically, I'm speaking with a very special guest, Lloyd Kaufman, the legendary DIY film director, founder of Troma Films, and the man responsible for the cult classics Toxic Avenger, Return to Nukem High, Terror Firmer, and so many more, and especially a film very close to my own heart, Tromeo and Juliet, for which Lloyd and his screenwriter James Gunn, of Guardians of the Galaxy fame, The Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker, hired me to compose the score for Tromeo and Juliet. When you were first writing this, even before you hired James Gunn to do the screenplay.
Yes, James came out of Columbia. Jill Chantalou at HBO. I think one of James's brothers might have been working with her. She sent over his resume because she had a gut feeling that he might be a good Troma candidate. And he was looking for work, although his main thing was writing as a novelist. He had written a toy collector when he was in the MA program at Columbia. But I saw on his resume, James Gunn's resume, one of the items was that he was a performance artist and vomited on stage. So right away I said, okay, this guy sounds like he's got some Troma in him. And we hired him. I think originally it was to be my assistant. And then I think I read his manuscript and I definitely read something. And then I gave him $100. I had been working on Tromeo and Juliet for about 5 years to try to get a script that wasn't too terrible. And I tried every kind of, John Avildsen, who directed Rocky and was a big mentor of mine. He suggested get some high school kids and have them talk to each other in high school talk and write it that way. And Jason Green, who was met when he was about 15 on the set of Sergeant Kabukiman, NYPD. He and his friends got together and tried to speak contemporary high school talk in this Tromeo and Juliet context, but that didn't work. And I just couldn't get anywhere. And then I took a shot and said, James, here, would you please write this, come back and solve it. And he did. He did a brilliant job. And I couldn't figure out what to do with the balcony speech without being trite. And boy, he nailed it. He nailed that balcony speech. It was amazing. And also, his first draft had 7 urination scenes, or maybe 8 urination scenes. I did cut that down because I don't really, I limit it to no more than 5 urination scenes in my movies. You'll notice.
When you guys were conceiving of the film, did you picture the stylistic diversity in the music? I mean, you guys had asked me for such an array of styles. I hired a local jazz combo. I brought in a local garage band, kind of a rock revival thing. I brought in indie singer-songwriters, lots of girls, a ton of opera singers to try and get that part in La Folie and Yes, We'll Gather at the River, the schmaltzy TV show theme. Did you guys always have that stylistic breadth in mind?
Most of the movies that Troma has made, partly because our budgets are limited, we have never really been able to afford full scores. So we've populated the movies with on-screen singing and dancing. Even Squeeze Play's got a music video within it, a really good song, and it's got a lot of gags during the song. Yeah, I've liked the idea of putting in songs by different composers. There's a graphic novel that Tim Seeley put together with about a dozen artists, something Tromaville, a big thick book. And all the artists have different styles, and they draw Tromaville and Toxic Avenger and Toxie and the Toxic Crusaders. They're all different styles, and I rather like mixing in the different songs. And I think James had a lot to do with picking the songs. Troma has a reputation with people who create music.
When I was going through the archive looking for music, I found a ton of stuff that didn't make it into the film. A lot of music, a lot of mixes, a lot of compositions that wound up on the cutting room floor. I remember always feeling bad about that, like, oh, I am not nailing this. All of our phone calls, and that would send me back to the tape decks. We didn't have digital editing back then, so, redos were tough. And I just felt like I was failing you guys. Was I a lot to put up with, or was there some disappointment? You can be honest. It's 26 years later.
You were very, you couldn't be nicer. And as I've mentioned, I regret that I didn't give you more freedom, let you do more of your own. I just had this thing in my head, that theme, and I was obsessed with that theme.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get obsessed with something and you don't listen to people, and that's what happens. I am sorry that you did all those tracks and that we didn't use them. Maybe if you were in New York and you were with me, I wouldn't have the courage to say no, but you were 3,000 miles away and it was a telephone and you couldn't hit me. And no, my recollection is you were a totally good guy. You were a really nice guy. And I had a wonderful time when we were filmed your special feature for the DVD when you were going to end your life because of Tromeo and Juliet. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, we will. That is a good laugh. I watched that for the first time in probably 15 years, and that's got a kick. I'm definitely going to put that on the internet soon here. You'll have to put that on Troma now.
You're very good at it, very convincing.
I think I have one last question. This screened at Cannes Film Festival. I think, while I was composing and recording the film score, you and James announced that this was going to debut at Cannes Film Festival and that we had to hurry up. We were under a hard deadline, and that resulted in several consecutive 48-hour recording sessions for Ezra and I. And because there was no leeway on deadline.
Oh, no.
How did Tromeo and Juliet wind up at Cannes?
Well, at Cannes, we rent theaters there. We don't get into competition. We don't. Cannes basically rent the theater. You show your movie, and you hope that independent or international distributors will show up and license your movie. Mm-hmm. And I think we got a few. We didn't get much sales. We didn't get much. No, I don't recall any sales, to be honest. I'm sure ultimately we did. But I don't think we were terribly successful at Cannes that year. And we had James and Tiffany, and we had about 15 people that we brought over. We made a lot of noise, got a lot of attention. And Tromeo and Juliet got invited into, had to be at least a dozen pretty good film festivals as a result of Cannes.
Well, just months ago, I believe you said there was a screening of many Romeo and Juliet based films and that the Troma screening went terrifically.
Yeah, the Museum of Modern Art did a month of Shakespeare, Breaking Bard, they called it, and Tromeo and Juliet was in a 3-movie day to celebrate Romeo and Juliet. They had Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, they had Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, and they had our Tromeo and Juliet. And our film sold out at 4 p.m. with a huge number of people being turned away at the Museum of Modern Art, but the 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock show were half empty. And I think Tromeo and Juliet is very underviewed. People are still discovering it, propelled only by word of mouth. So, and also I think that the bourgeois subscribers at the Museum of Modern Art probably they're a little older, and I don't think they know how to get onto porn on the internet. So here was some sex and violence for them, and I think that would compel them to check out Tromeo and Juliet. And it was packed.
So goes the bourgeoisie. Well, Lloyd, I wanted to thank you all these years ago for having faith in me and letting me do this project. It's been artistically encouraging to me to go back to this archive and see oh, wow, there was a lot of quality work here. And I remember being so vexed by the process, by the iterative process of composing for picture. But you believed in me, and I just have to thank you for that.
Well, you were very talented, and James was the one who recommended you and played a lot of your music, pre-Tromeo and Juliet music, which I fell in love with, and that was a great decision, and I'm very happy that we got to work together, and that Tromeo and Juliet may in fact have helped your career. No, Troma's not always the most prestigious item on the resume, as we call it.
Well, I love Troma. Lloyd, thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you, Willie, and good luck. And when you're in New York, we're part of the Willie Wisely cohort. So we'll see you soon, I hope.
I appreciate that. Bye.
You're awesome, Willie. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon. Bye.
And that was our discussion with legendary DIY film director Lloyd Kaufman. Thanks very much to Lloyd for taking the time to speak with us. If you dug that conversation and you want to hear more talks with more cool people, please subscribe to this podcast, Musing Wisely. And until next time, my name is Willie Wisely. Thanks for listening.